Microphones are everywhere. Every big speech.
Ich bin ein Berliner.
Every performance.
All right.
And every announcement.
Chris Moyles is leaving The Breakfast Show, and we're about to tell you who's taking over.
They're around so much that it turns out it's quite easy to forget they're right in front of you.
There's Adam Clymer, major league asshole.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Big time. And since they were invented in 1876, they've very quickly become a necessity. There's probably one very close to you right now. Maybe you're even holding it. Some are tiny.
You in the way?
Yeah. Some larger. And some just look plain weird. But the one most heard around the globe in its time, and that shows up again and again in photographs with the most recognisable faces, is one money couldn't buy. The BBC-Marconi Type A. You might say iconic is becoming a bit of an overused word, but this microphone literally is an icon, the basis of the symbol on most computers worldwide. Here's the bad news. Not many are around these days, especially ones that work, as it became tradition at the corporation to empty the insides and plate them with gold as leaving presents for announcers. But what a thing to have on your mantelpiece. The good news, though, is here at the BBC, we have plenty. You'll notice it looks pretty hefty, and it's actually really big. So it tended to stay in studios and leave the world travel to its smaller counterparts. But what it missed in adventure, it made up for in the circles it socialised in. It played host to filmmaker Alfred Hitchcock, poet T.S. Eliot, legendary author H.G. Wells, and that's Charlie Chaplin. French Army General Charles de Gaulle used Taipei to broadcast the first appeal to the people of France days after it was taken by the Nazis in World War II, marking the beginning of the French resistance and seen as one of the most important speeches in French history and in radio broadcasting. It wasn't just there for the big names, though. It developed new ones too.
Hello?
Hello, Petula, it's Joe Leates.
Oh, yes.
British singer and legend Petula Clark began her career aged 9 in front of a Taipei.
Now you're going back a bit. That's absolutely true. It was during the war, and I went along to send a message to my uncle, who was serving, I think, in Iraq.
Now, lads, it's time to send along personal messages and greetings to you from your wives and families and loved ones. And first of all...
It was just to say hello, we're okay, don't worry about us, and give them a little bit of home news, and that was it. During rehearsal, there was the most enormous air raid, and the producer asked if one of the kids could come up and sing a song or say a piece of poetry, to calm things down. So I go up on stage, and they put a box so that I could reach the microphone. It was one of those big BBC microphones, and I sang into this thing, and the magic, of course, was that they could hear me up in the control room.
Makes you think that heaven is coming close to you.
And after I sang my little song, they said, well, that's great. Would you like to sing your song on the radio as well as send your message? And so I said, okay, And they got a huge reaction from the troops.
When the postman brought little Petula Clark a pile of letters after her first broadcast, she was surprised.
There was one wonderful letter that said, hearing her voice was like hearing chapel bells on a Sunday morning, It was really quite nice. So I started singing quite regularly on the radio.
Can you remember much about what it was like inside the BBC? Going in at such a young age at that time.
Oh, well, when I went back to sing regularly, I would go to Broadcasting House, which was a very special sort of building. I can remember the smell of it. It was a little bit sort of frumpy. Yes, people used to dress well in those days. The men used to wear trilby hats, and the ladies wore high heels, and the engineers at the time used to wear white overalls. You know, they were you weren't allowed to go into the control room. That was like a special area. We weren't allowed to go in there. But as time went by, and I was recording a great deal, we just stand in front of the microphone and sing, But what happens to that sound once it gets through to the control room is something else. And the sound engineer is the most important person.
Petula Clark there. So while setting off singing careers and directing the Second World War, the microphone was clearly doing something right operationally too. Eyes had been on the groundbreaking ribbon microphone invented by RCA, the Radio Corporation of America, but it was a little too expensive. So in true BBC form, they made their own, for less than 10% of what RCA were charging. Nice going. The Type A stayed in use by the BBC from 1934 until 1959, a whole 25 years. That's a long time when technology was developing so rapidly. But apart from the size, the Type A looks kind of similar to a lot of microphones today. Take the microphone I'm recording this voiceover on, for instance. The proportions are different, but overall it looks pretty close. So what about inside? My sound engineering side made me want to open it up and see how it works. But I thought it a little bit less risky to make this instead. The Type A is called a ribbon microphone. That's because behind the perforated cover is exactly that, a ribbon of metal. Inside here is where the Type A changed over the years of its run and became the Type AX to the AXB and finally the AXB-T. Each step was mostly small adjustments and improvements. With the help of one of the trusty BBC engineering manuals, we can see that sound waves come in from either the front or the back and hit the ribbon in the middle, so thin that it flexes and wiggles when the noise vibrations in the air hit it, just like your eardrum. The flexing moves the ribbon through a magnetic field created by two magnets on either side. Doing this generates a very small voltage, which is unique to the sound it is taking in. The microphone then connects to studio equipment that amplifies this up to a level that you can hear. And because the ribbon is a flat piece of metal, it can interpret vibrations from both sides. So you could sit at the front or the back of the microphone and be heard equally well, but not to the left or right. This is called a bidirectional pickup pattern, because it picks up sound from two directions. The ribbon microphones of today are still based around this design. Finally, of course, we want to hear a bit more of how the microphone sounds. Well, we can hear it in use by Sir John Snagg, the BBC voice who made the first announcement of the D-Day landings and who went on to become one of the first BBC television newsreaders. He specially recorded with the microphone for this demo tape.
This speech is recorded from a BBC-Marconi Velocity ribbon microphone, type AXB-T. The speaking distance is 18 inches on the microphone axis. A series correction condenser of 2 microfarads in the microphone circuit. During the latter half of the test passage, which follows, a recording of crowd noise will be reproduced in the studio at a level of 105 fon. The different speech sounds have been molded into sentences such that the consonants and usual compounds occur in the vowel combinations which are met with very frequently in English. For lack of time, it was not possible to get every group included.
I think nothing else need be said in this place on the subject.
I'll leave it for you then to make up your own mind on how that sounds. Let's just say they were great at the time, but we don't tend to use them as much in the studios here at the BBC anymore. Cheerio!